Welcome to Sustainably Speaking Africa, a podcast about reshaping narratives around sustainability and climate action in Africa. This podcast is brought to you by the Kenya Climate Innovation Centre and is made at Semabox. Join us for this and other episodes as we talk to industry leaders, frontline communities, and the innovators who are accelerating the progress towards a greener, sustainable future. Welcome again to Sustainably Speaking, and as always, please like, share, and subscribe.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to Sustainably Speaking Africa. Today we are joined by Miss Martha Wakoli, who is a senior manager at Clasp, and she's here to tell us a bit more about what she does and how we can benefit from some of their services. Karibu sana.
Asante.
Tell us a bit about how you found yourself working in the clean energy space.
Well, that's an interesting question. So thanks for having me. I studied electrical engineering many years ago. That will tell you my age, but I finished in 2013, sorry. And at the time, I didn't have any clarity on what exactly I was going to use my engineering for. I just knew that I was interested in fixing things, right? And so I started by actually fixing trains, which doesn't happen very often. But in doing so, and especially because of where your trains pass in this country, I realized that there's quite a few people who live without electricity, specifically in Kenya. I didn't quite understand that very well because I grew up in the city and we always had power. And even when we didn't, during rationing, it always came back. And so it felt like a more interesting way to apply my engineering training to try and solve for the problem of energy access. And so since 2014, I've been trying to do that. I've worked in this space for the last 11 years. Across government, I worked at Kenya Power for 3.5 years. And then I moved to the private sector where I worked on mini grids and grid scale solar between 2018 and 2021. And then I moved to my current role, which is at Clasp. And here our primary focus is actually on energy efficient appliances and equipment. And that matters because electricity or energy access is not just about the supply. It is also what happens once you have the supply. You need lights, you need cooling, you need to be able to freeze your food. And so I'm more interested in how do we make those appliances that allow you to do that extremely efficient.
All right. Yeah. Sounds interesting, and we'll get into that shortly. But I want us to talk a bit about Clasp and what does Clasp do beyond the equipment that you've spoken about.
Yeah. So I'll introduce Clasp in the broadest way that I can and then dive a little deeper into the specific question you've asked. And so Clasp is an international nonprofit that has existed for the last 25 years. And our primary focus is on the role of efficient appliances. One, in fighting climate change. How can there be an instrument for that? And then two, how do they improve people's lives? Now, to provide a little bit more color on how exactly we do that, there are, I would say, 3 or 4 main interventions that we work on primarily. The first one is research and policy, so generating the kind of evidence that policymakers need to understand where to direct their investments, especially when it comes to energy access or climate mitigation. So to give you a practical example, when governments are writing their budgets, there is an energy component of the budget, and that could go into building a power plant, that's setting up infrastructure. It could go into extending power lines, that's also, supply infrastructure. Or the funding could go into improving the way that we use the electricity we already have. That's the side that energy efficiency comes into. So we've already generated this electricity, it's already been supplied to your house. How do we not waste it? Because when we get it out of the ground, there's a climate implication to it. When we waste power, there is an economic implication to it. And so the primary role of then helping governments with standards, labeling, being able to protect their markets against low quality appliances and equipment then becomes really important in trying to ensure that they save money, but they also save their environment. So that's the primary way that we support governments. That's research and policy. The other aspect of work that we do is financing. And what that means is we support companies, usually very early stage companies, to prototype or check out whether their technology can work in certain markets like ours. Many of those are usually solar powered because they are being tested in places that don't have electricity. And so we offer subsidies, grants, and or innovation awards. And since 2016, we've done about $11 million worth of that kind of financing into early stage companies.
Okay.
The third aspect of our work is around quality assurance. And what this means is, how do you as a consumer know that the technology that you've bought, whether it is a fridge or a washing machine, is actually good quality and won't explode in your home? If you think about an electric pressure cooker, when you want to boil your githeri, how do you know that the equipment that you're buying from Hotpoint or Ramtons in the context of Kenya will not explode in your house? And so Clasp has for several years actually been running Verasol, which is an independent quality assurance platform that today has the largest database in the world of quality assured solar products. And so people can go there to understand what's a good product, where can you find it, and that is often used again to support policymakers and or financiers to be able to know where to incentivize and direct their money or their policy in order to crowd in good products and protect consumers. And then the last and final thing is that we play an ecosystem coordination role. So what that means is, because we interact with the private sector through the companies we finance, we interact with policymakers through our research and evidence, we interact with end users when we're doing research to understand how they use appliances. Then what we try and do is serve almost like a collaborative matchmaking role to ensure that the ecosystem for energy access, and specifically in the context of efficient appliances and equipment, can work together to accelerate the pace at which we ensure that people who need these products, people who need fans so that they stay cool in northern Kenya, people who need water filters at the coast, etc., can get them at a good price, at good quality. Yeah.
Okay, so we've spoken about 4 things that you do. I'm trying to figure out which one to concentrate on a bit more. But you do a lot of research, and that means you also identify some of the people that you can invest in or products that you can invest in. Walk us through a journey on how someone can find themselves being supported by Clasp.
All right, so Clasp comes in often at the very beginning, which is at ideation stage. So just to provide, I guess, slightly more context about what the ecosystem looks like and the specific area that Clasp plays in, right? When you're thinking about a business, not just in this sector, in any sector, one, you have a product or service that you think there is a willing buyer for, right? So you're an innovator or you're a producer of something. And then you have a team around you that helps you bring your innovation to life. And then once that happens, then you try and test or pilot, which is used a lot in research, with a sample group of potential buyers or potential customers to try and understand, does the product I have meet their needs at the price point they want it at? And then once you have confirmation on that, then you'll say, okay, now I'm ready to mass produce. I'm ready to scale this product and sell it beyond my little sample size. And that phase is called scaling, right? And then thereafter, you're like, okay, now we have built a business. We have run it for 3 years. I am now profitable. I am looking for investment or credit so that I stop operating only in Nairobi. I sell in Kenya, Uganda, and Rwanda. So normally, that's the traditional journey of a business, regardless of the market it is in. Now, in the context of energy access, there is a little bit more nuance. One, most businesses are trying to serve traditionally consumers that we would consider lower income.
Okay.
And so they're not selling kind of like a fast-moving consumer good, like bread or tissue paper. They're selling what would otherwise be a public good if our own infrastructure was able to supply electricity cheaply to everyone. So that's piece number one to just remember. So it means that as these businesses are building those initial stages, then they need a lot more support than a regular person selling Coca-Cola because of their target market. And so Clasp actually plays in that initial supporting area where we provide grants and or subsidies for businesses to test the technology technology and actually ensure their idea works, for them to test their business model. So, okay, fine, you have a working fridge. You want to sell it on a pay-as-you-go or installment basis to a community in Rwanda. You need to test that out before you bring in 500 more, right? And so we offer that kind of grant support, technical assistance, and occasionally, once in a while, we also offer R&D support. So you don't even have a finished product yet. You have an idea, you've tested it in a lab, and you want to field test it with people. Then we offer that kind of research and development support. So a lot of Clasp's work is focused in the very early stage of a business. So for some people, you think of that almost as incubation. But the difference is that our grants and support come with all the other pieces of the puzzle that I told you about initially, which is we will offer you with the quality assurance support. We will offer you with a linkage to the policymakers that you'd like to put your product in front of so that they lower the taxes. And we will also link you to organizations that have finance for slightly bigger companies, results-based financing programs, or even financiers like banks, if you decide you want to take debt to grow your company. So we offer almost like full spectrum support, but our primary injection is to really make companies exist first so that the rest of you can scale them into ventures.
Okay. Seeing as you start from the beginning, is there any story you can tell us or a fantastic experience you've seen where you started at the incubation, since we are quoting incubation, to the end, and now you've seen the product in the market?
Oh, yeah, there are quite a number. But because today we are at an African summit, I will actually tell you about an African enterprise, right? And so in the clean cooking sector, there is an enterprise called Ecobora, Ecobora. And they have this interesting 300-liter e-cooking boiler, so an electric boiler. For anyone who's Kenyan or really went to any African boarding school, then you might remember that there were boilers that used to provide meals, and these boilers often used to use firewood, a lot of firewood, and 90% of the cooking was done by men just because of scale, like the kind of muscle you need to turn the stuff around. Now, Ecobora is an enterprise by a young Kenyan called Justin Abuga. And about 2 years ago, they approached us for an R&D grant, right? And so what he had was an idea and one prototype. He had built one. And what he wanted to check is, can this really work in schools, or are these just vibes, right? And so we supported Ecobora through a research grant for them to deploy their e-cooking boilers in 9 schools in the country. Now, since doing so, one, they have been able to attract more financing from other agencies who would typically think of them as too green or too risky because they don't have a factory in the traditional sense. They have a warehouse somewhere in Kajiado where they fabricate this boiler, they test it according to an EPRA standard, and then they install it in a school. Now, if you think about the sensitivity of schools in this country and school fires, school burning, etc., electric cooking is not a thing that you can pilot without certainty. But in order for them to have certainty, they need the grant to be able to produce units to put them in schools.
For sure.
And as we speak, Ecobora is actually on a venture building pathway, which means that they survived what we call the valley of death. They now have orders that they must meet. It means they can produce at a slightly more economic rate because of economies of scale. They can buy more material to produce more units and deploy them in more schools. And I'm really pleased to say that all the 9 schools where they've deployed this technology, it still works. So we've proved the concept for more than 2 years. The schools are not just in Nairobi. I want to clarify that for your audience. There's a school in West Pokot, in Nyamira, in Makueni, in Athi River, right? And so it is not just a solution that's being made up over here by a small group of people who think they know what's up. It's actually working in public schools in this country. And now they have an opportunity to scale that to feed into Kenya's basically higher objectives, right? Around clean cooking at an institutional level. So I think that's one simple story of an enterprise where we took a risk on them, injected a little bit of capital and all the other support we provide. So taught them how to do their quality assurance, how you do your reporting, etc., so that then they're ready when they have to present this documentation to an equity investor or to someone who provides debt, then it becomes much easier for them to get through the door.
All right. That's a very interesting story. And you can find this story on your website, or at least
Yes,
see.
or you can even check Ecobora. Search Ecobora on YouTube. They
We'll
have
find
like
them.
videos. It's a whole enterprise that exists, and I'm really proud of it because it's run by young Kenyans, and their primary fabricator, and this is just a personal bias, their main welder is female, which is really exciting. So
It's fantastic work.
Yeah.
So I want us to go back to just step a bit back and see, by the time that they were approaching you for R&D, what did they need to have done? Or can I come to you with an idea and say, this is my idea, can we explore this? Really? Because
Yes.
everyone who sat there is like, proof of concept is the greatest challenge.
Correct. So it might sound, I guess, to some extent, too simple to be true.
Yeah.
But the primary reason that research and development funds exist is to test ideas.
Okay.
Now, in the global north, that is often funded by governments. And this happens at university. People test ideas in labs at universities all the time. It is the premise upon which PhDs are done, to test ideas.
Yes.
Now, in markets like ours, we don't have as much government revenue going towards supporting research and development at scale. And so that is where you see nonprofits coming in to almost like fill that gap. Because the thing that is different with research and development is that you can fail. So it is not a venture yet. I expect no return on investment. So someone must be willing to take the risk to fail in order for the ones that do not, in fact, fail to become a real product or a real business that then the people who need proof of concept and 3 years worth of banking information and to assess team readiness and corporate governance can then invest into. And I think one of the primary constraints, especially for SMEs on our continent, is that no one is willing to test ideas first before asking for businesses to invest in. And so to a small extent, that is the primary contribution that we're trying to make.
Okay.
And we're not doing it by ourselves. There's quite a few people in the Efficiency for Access Coalition who put in some money to be able to support this idea of, can we test innovations as they are arising from our universities or from incubation hubs and check which of those are fit for purpose in our context and can be accelerated to businesses. So some of the bigger names that you hear today, Sun Culture, Sun King, Ban Manufacturing, where if you check their EPC correctly, should have some Kenyan names for food there, like ugali and, githeri, etc.
Yeah.
All those people, when we came upon them several years ago, right, they were just testing an idea. And so we had to take the initial risk and then support them with quality assurance and testing so that they get the kind of paperwork they need to raise the millions of dollars that they've now raised to be able to set up manufacturing here. So it is not a short process. One, I just want to disabuse anyone of the notion. Research and development takes a long time. Results are not always obvious, but the impact is often at scale. And when it happens, it happens. So like this week, I think, or last week, Sun King opened a manufacturing facility in Kenya, right? A few years ago, Ban Manufacturing did the same. Right now, you'll hear Sun Culture of pumps are raising loads of money through carbon financing. But for their pump, for them to test the pump, they tested it with Clasp several years ago in Senegal and Rwanda, and they told them this thing doesn't work as well as it should. They went back, iterated, and now they have a product on the market that's flying off the shelf. So that's the, I guess, relationship between those who come in later to support companies versus those who are willing to take a bet before a company even exists.
Okay. Where can we find you? Since we have ideas, all of us have brilliant
Everywhere.
ideas. Where can we find you for support?
So I guess the simplest answer in this digital age is that we have our website. It is freely available if you have internet. It is www.clasp.ngo.
Okay.
On the website, there's contact information. You can email us. Our team is very responsive. You could also check for opportunities. We have requests for proposals, we have vacancies, etc., under our Work With Us tab. And then I think the final thing is by interacting with us in person. We tend to have a fairly significant presence in many summits, panels, conferences. And I'm hoping if I'm doing myself any justice on this podcast, we're pretty approachable.
Okay.
And so the hope is that if you see any of us anywhere, stop us, talk to us, ask us about our products and services. We're always happy to help. But the simplest entry point is use our website or use our socials. Clasp is very active on LinkedIn. I think there's another platform called Threads, maybe, that I'm not too familiar with, but I think it also exists. And those platforms are quick response platforms where if you need a particular service or anything, if you ask there, then you'll be redirected to the specific team member who can support your request.
All right, thanks. Thank you. We'll find you around there. Final question, and this is a futuristic question. In 10 years, what would you like to see in the sector?
Oh, this is a good question, and maybe one that has a bit of an unpopular answer, but I will say it anyway.
Please do.
I hope in 10 years, the question around Africans and energy access is just obsolete because Africans have energy access, right? So in an ideal world, right, the provision of electricity and electricity services in and of itself is not new. Electricity has existed for decades.
Yeah.
The challenge that we are having is trying to find a way to provide that equitably for every African everywhere. And that is primarily an economic challenge. It is not actually a scientific or technical challenge. It is an economic one. So what I mean by that is that the largest barrier to us solving this problem at scale once and for all is the fact that because people are poor, then people and their governments are poor, actually, then it is much harder for us to provide the services that they need in a way that has a return on investment for anyone.
Okay.
Therefore, even if a government borrows to extend infrastructure to a place where there is no economic activity happening, it becomes harder for the government and its citizens who are taxed to pay back that debt because it is not yielding productive return.
Yeah.
Similarly, if a company is trying to sell products, high efficiency, high quality products to a person who cannot afford food, then the chances of that company surviving and then scaling are reduced significantly. So I think the energy access conversation for a long time has focused on the technical aspects of it. How do we provide the power? How do people use it, etc.? My hope is that in 10 years, the reframing that is happening today here and in many other places puts people at the center of that conversation. And we start asking, how does providing energy access affordably make these people less poor and have more agency about how they want to spend their time? So that's my hope, is that in 10 years, I don't have to do a podcast like this specifically, maybe just telling you about the success stories for how we figured out how to power Africans sustainably so that they can actually live full, dignified lives without having to worry about infrastructure deficits.
All right. The beauty of this is it'll be online 10 years from now. And so we will be back here, possibly.
Fingers crossed.
And see if the dream has been achieved.
I hope so too.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Karibu sana. And thank you so much to our viewers. We will see you in the next episode.